Hello, hello, hello. My name is Vincent Sekwati Koko Mantsoe. I'm originally from South Africa. I was born in Soweto, in Johannesburg. But I'm now currently based in France. Men-Jaro was created in 2005 in South Africa for a dance company called Moving Into Dance. It was presented at the South Bank for the Dance Umbrella in 2006. The reason why I chose Men-Jaro specifically, um, it speaks definitely to the idea of the word itself, Men-Jaro. And then what is Men-Jaro? Men-Jaro, it means friendship. And it's in a like kind of like South African slang in a township when you're speaking, friendly to people. They say Jaro, 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 Men-Jaro, friend, my friend. And this was like my first time I wanted to tap into the musical composition, specifically for this piece. All the musicians that were playing in the whole piece, they all come from South Africa, and they're playing only indigenous music. Because in Africa we use music as a conversation, a call and a respond. So I wanted to tap on the more especially indigenous instruments that they've never been used in a kind of like a contemporary manner, and to make sure that the integrity of the relationship is being kept from the African roots, but then it can also be translated, of course, to the bodies that they are not necessarily used to do like the African or traditional movements. So the first section of the work I'm going to share with you today is the section that is quite very important, because it speaks to the nature of a conversation and kind of like a ceremonial opening of the scene. And there is an echoing calling from the musicians. And the South African voice, it brings such something much more magical into it, because there's a lot of a cappella into it. And it opens with a very delicate introduction, where uh, the dancers are in the background. You see them, but you don't see them. And then you have one soloist who is actually guiding the procession. And that for me, it was the most important aspect of Men-Jaro, of how to introduce each other and have a conversation and to say, you are my friend at the end of the day. Whatever happens, whatever background we are coming from, you are my friend. So the musicality again, for me, I mean personally, it was so powerful in a sense where I actually even forgot, that I'm in the theater, I'm performing, because the sound and the a cappella that they were singing, it was giving the permission also to introduce ourselves as performers, but again to introduce the audience to say, we are here to talk, and then we are here to have a conversation. And then as the friendship goes, it's not about just here, but it's beyond that. So that opening scene, it was very important for me. That's why I chose it, because it gives a sense of belonging as well, and the introduction to say that please come to my place. I'm welcoming you because you are my friend. You are not a stranger, even though you are from far. You must remember that the dancers, they all come from different backgrounds. And that conversation, for me, it was very important to highlight at the beginning, before we can actually move on to the other stuff. Look, the creation process of Men-Jaro, it was quite very interesting because the dynamics are not the same. Again, you have the musicians or the composer on one side, and then his mindset is on a different path, and then you have the creator and the dancer at the same time. Uh, my mindset is on a different path. The dancers, they understand a different message behind, Men-Jaro. Uh, because to have a kind of like a common understanding, a common ground to come into place, we needed to break the barriers. It was strange, but at the same time very interesting, because you had this cohesive movement that was happening, taking place. Then how to shape everything into a path where we come to a common ground. That it was quite very important, and the humility of it and the grace of how actually it came into one form. It was really about, now I'm talking to you as a friend. I'm not talking to you as I'm a boss, and then you are a composer or you are a dancer. We are talking as friends, so that we can make this thing possible. And of course, a lot of negotiations. Lots of negotiations. Of course, you always have a tension when you are creating such a work, where you have different people come from different backgrounds of cultures. But the beauty of it again is that once it's been created, you know that the beauty is going to come out from that tension that was building up. So the second section that I'm going to be sharing with you today is a solo going to a duet. And the solo is me dancing it, which leads to a fellow South African who now lives in Maryland, USA. This particular section of the solo, I think the unique part of it, because of where I come from. My background is very more spiritual. I come from a family of what we call in South Africa Sangomas, or shaman. So I wanted to highlight the force and the spirituality behind the movements with the drum and the singing, because they play a very important role in this relationship between human beings and the community. So for me, it became, and as always, it becomes a little bit much more a transformative moment, where everything, it becomes clearer and much more elevated when I'm doing the solo. Because what happens is that I go to a trance state. I lose myself in a performance, where, of course, I have to be guided by my fellow South African. Because, again, the danger of not having to know how to control this transformative process is that it can last for long. So I had to be quite very aware the fact that I'm still performing for the audience, but at the same time I'm also in a conversation not only with my fellow dancers and also the musicians, and of course I'm performing for the audience, but I'm also in conversation with my ancestors. So that is quite a very deep moment for me, where the transformation, it gets a little bit more higher. And the tension, you can also feel it from the musicians when they're singing. You can feel the energy of the stage getting transformed in a sense. So what happens in this moment is that once I get into the trance state, of course, before that, I have to build it up before I get there. Because everything, it doesn't just happen like that. You have to build it up. So my fellow dancer, Lesole, his name is, and who is now a shaman himself, before he even knew that he actually been called to be a shaman. He actually come and basically embrace the energy and the power, and also just to say, my friend, I'm here for you to support whichever situation you are in. It's about that aspect of support, and having to try to take me out from that transformative process. And that also, it takes time, to come out of it, because you need a gentler touch of a person to bring you back into the reality. So again, that solo section that's why I chose it, because it's so significant to give a small idea of that transformative and the highlight of the community, basically, because I wanted to try to tap into the spiritual side of where I come from, where the community also engages in that. So it's that relationship that is quite very important. The bond that you cannot separate between the two. So, and then of course we go slowly but surely into the duet, where of course Lesole he's able to bring me out of that different rhyme, into a different now space where we say, okay, you said what you needed to say, now let's move on. So the third section that I'm going to share with you is almost to the finale of Men-Jaro. And this is now a little bit more kind of like a tenderness, tenderness, because we all need that at some point. After this exuberant and very energetic and very powerful ritualistic energy that took place, we needed something a little bit more, something to soothe, the soul, and to be able to get into a different elements of how we can actually manipulate the body in a very much more softer way, but being very direct about it. So what happens in the last section that I chose is a trio, basically. It happens between myself and the two women. I was brought up by women in my family, and the community of women, they always shield, they always give a different energy into the community or the family. So to be able to interact with only the two women who are French, it was quite very important for me to try to tap into, because again, we both came from different backgrounds of cultures. They were trained on classical ballet. I was trained in Graham and some other African dances. So to give the softness of it, we had to come to some kind of agreement of understanding, okay, this is where I come from. Then I'm going to share with you or with them, my energy, but then my little more tenderness with grace. And of course, the music, I must not forget about the music. The music, it always circulates, because the instruments that we were using, again, as I said, they're very traditional. You've got umkhobe, you've got ohadi, you have ngoma, a big drum. You have, of course, stolitoli, which is like it's a flute, but then it's not a flute. You can actually play it. The tubes of electricity. You can play with that. And this is what either the Shangani or the Venda people they use, or Bapedi people they use to make a rhythm. It makes a high pitched sound. So that the music, we don't want to forget about that, because it plays a crucial role into the whole process. So the nuances and the delicacy of it complemented everything into one place. And the dancers that I'm working with, including my wife, they absolutely understood the path that I wanted to take in terms of how can we manipulate this trio so that it becomes so in linked, even though we come from different parts of the world. And it can be so ingrained and then it can gel into something magical at the same time. So that was like, almost like the finale part of it, the trio. And which leads, of course, to the soloist of the dancer, my wife, finishing the whole procession of a Men-Jaro to say, yes, we are standing here as friends, not as individuals. I'm coming from France, I'm coming from Japan, but then as collectively. Yet, I can be standing here representing who I am, where I come from. And then the rest of the dancers or the interpreters, they are still there, almost like in the beginning, interpreting they are in the shadows. You can still see them; they are there, but then you only see the physical body is only a solo, just trying to mimic the opening, then the end of the whole process of Men-Jaro. So yeah, and I think for me, Men-Jaro is and I said it before, is one of the significant work that I've created, trying to bridge those barriers. And I mean, there has been, of course, many productions similar to that. Creators or choreographers, uh, they they use the different dancers from different background, which is beautiful. Because my grandmother used to say to me, you don't have one soul, and then you are actually, imagine yourself as a flower. You can bloom in different colors at once. So to be able to bring a cast of different people from different backgrounds or cultures and different skin tones, it brings a different light into everything. To say that it is possible actually to coexist together. Yes, we can have an argument, but then your argument, it should be able to be on a friendly manner, not to to be aggressive, and then no, it can be in a very yeah with humility basically, and grace, and grace, because it's quite very important, so that we don't lose ourselves in the swirling world there where chaos is all what we think of, because there's beauty within that. So Men-Jaro, it plays that role. If it happens that I will be able to recreate it again, I'm sure it will be a little more different. I won't be dancing in it, but other people will be dancing into it. So I mean, I think Men-Jaro, and especially when I presented here in London, at the South Bank, for Dance Umbrella, it was still fresh. It was still fresh, and even for us, we knew that we were taking a big risk because we were getting into a big stage, and we've got the big stages in South Africa, but not as big as that. So it was a test to say that can we create a relationship through Men-Jaro with a British audience, and can we bridge a little bit, to say that actually it is possible. Of course, you need time to invest into it, and then you need time to absorb what the other person is saying to you. So thank you very much for watching my choreographer's cut of Men-Jaro. And I hope it is in my senses, maybe, to see you on stage in a couple of years, maybe. And I wanted to thank, of course, the Dance Umbrella Festival for inviting me to share with you my journey of Men-Jaro. And again, as I said, I'm hoping to see you again in London, because it's been a donkey's years, as we say in South Africa, donkey's years. So with all of that, I would say, yeah, sure.